This is a ranking of the 2022 Philippine presidential candidates based on their electoral track record, meaning how well they did in the last national elections that they were a part of. So yesterday I spent a lot of time looking through the 2016 and 2019 elections. I went through every single candidate and saw just where they got their votes from, which parts of the country are their strongholds, and wrote it all down. I have a bunch of notes here, and I compared everyone, and I came up with this ranking based on, again, on their past electoral strongholds. Now, this is not necessarily going to be replicated fully in 2022. In fact, I don't think it will at all, but I think it's important to consider because this is like a good starting point in the further analysis of the Philippine 2022 presidential race to see where it stands at this moment. I'm only going to focus on 5 main candidates. I'm going to leave out PDP-Laban's Bato, Dela, Rosa, partly because I'm still skeptical at this point that he's going to be a real candidate. I don't know. I feel like he's probably going to drop out. I'm unsure. But I will consider the PDP-Laban candidates at the very end of this video because I think it's also very important to consider where the administration will put all their resources behind, like which candidate they will do that for. And if they have their own candidate, they'll change the race completely, and I'll go into that later on. I'm only going to focus on Manny Pacquiao, Ping Lacson, Isco Moreno, Lenny Robredo, and Bongbong Marcos. And again, I have them all ranked in the top 5 kind of fashion. Now, first, it's very important to consider that in the Philippines, you vote separately for president and vice president. And actually, ever since the presidency of Fidel Ramos, not a single vice president has been in the same party as the president. So often people, they campaign separately, but Filipinos seem to vote, in different ways. The last time, again, there was a president and vice president from the same party was with Cory Aquino and Dela. But that was a very different time in Philippine history. And ever since then, once more and more parties started becoming a part of the conversation, the specific party and the specific tandem has not really mattered as much. But for this case, I've wanted to still consider how much support a vice presidential candidate can give to the president. But I guess I've discounted it a bit because I know that it's not going to be completely added or not completely additive. Number 5, which might surprise, so I'm going to go with the top 5. Number 5, which might be surprising, is Isco Moreno and Willie Ong. But again, I'm going to focus on the presidential candidate. So number 5 is Isco Moreno. The reason why he is this low is because the last time he ran for national office was 2016 for the Senate race, and he placed 16th. You need to get 12 people to get into the Senate, and he was 16, so he didn't make it. And if you look at the electoral map of Isco Moreno, he didn't really do very well anywhere. The most maybe somewhere in NCR, but still then it was outside the top 12. Obviously since then, Isco Moreno has become more popular. He became the mayor of Manila in 2019, and he's on the news a lot. So I expect that he will not be 5th place come election time. But as of right now, based on the electoral track record of the past, Isco Moreno will be number 5. And another thing to consider as well is that Isco Moreno is from the Action Democratico Party, which is actually a kind of a weak party. It's not a very weak national party compared to the others, such as like Nacionalista or Liberal or whatever it is. For Action Democratico, it's not very strong, and so I don't know how much national electoral support he will get for this election cycle. Because a lot of campaigning, even though people do think about what the candidates say, there are different arguments or different ideological positions. For historically, the organizational structures have been a very big part in terms of, have played a very strong role in vote accumulation in different provinces. And so it's very important to consider past history of the different parties and different coalitions or the different candidates, specifically, how they did in different regions in the country will have a good sense of how they'll do in the future, or at least where their bases of support are. And because Moreno and Willie Ong have not done well at all in the past, they don't seem to have any base of support. Willie Ong ran in 2019 for the Senate race and he placed 18th, so even lower than Isco Moreno. So nationally, they haven't really proven themselves up to this point. So that's why they're at number 5. Number 4, I'm going to have Ping Lacson. Ping Lacson is going with Tito Soto, and they both actually ran at the same time in 2016 for the Senate race. They both placed fairly high, and the best regions that they did well in were NCR, Region 3, which is Central Luzon, and 4A, which is Calabarzon. These are 3 very populous regions, so this is really good to have a strong base of support in these regions. The problem is that they don't really have a strong base of support anywhere else, and another problem is that these 3 regions, NCR, Region 3, and Region 4A, are going to be heavily contested by the other candidates during this election cycle because there's a lot of overlapping bases of support. Especially, we just talked about Isco Moreno. Isco Moreno, if there's anywhere in the country where he'll have support, it'll probably be in NCR because that's where he is, practicing as the mayor of Manila. So because, Lacson and Soto have bases of support that will be very heavily contested, I feel like maybe it'll be more difficult for them to get the one seat. Maybe Tito Soto, I'm not sure, will do better than Lacson, but Lacson have a difficult time imagining he'll be chosen above someone like Isco Moreno or Bongbong Marcos in the regions where he does well in. So, that's why he's at number 4. Number 3 is Manny Pacquiao and Lito Lapid. Manny Pacquiao, actually, so if you look at the 2016 senatorial race, Manny Pacquiao ran alongside Lacson and Soto, but he placed much lower than them. So why is Pacquiao higher in my ranking than Lacson is? This is because Manny Pacquiao's base of support is not as contested as the others. What that means is that his base of support has a solid base in Region 10 and Region 12 in Mindanao. This is Northern Mindanao. And so, because Manny Pacquiao's base of support he doesn't have as much competition there, he has a better chance of retaining his electoral support there than Ping Lacson would have in NCR and Region 3 and 4A. So because of this, I think Pacquiao has more of a base of support. Lito Lapid also has some support in the same regions as Lacson and Soto, Region 3, 4A. Especially, he's very well loved in Pampanga. And so, I don't know exactly how much that will play into the presidency of Manny Pacquiao. Will Lito Lapid be able to get some votes from his very strong Pampanga base towards Pacquiao? I am not 100% sure. But I'm going to keep him at number 3 above Lacson just because I think that his base of support is less competitive than the support that Lacson and Soto have, although they did do better in the 2016 senatorial race. Now we have the two big ones. We have Bongbong Marcos and Leni Robredo. For number 2, as of right now, I'm going to have Bongbong Marcos. The reason why is because, the thing is, obviously, Bongbong Marcos lost to Leni Robredo in 2016, so it makes little sense that Bongbong Marcos would have a better chance of beating Leni Robredo, but there are other things as well that discount Marcos at this stage in time. One is that Marcos pretty much has very strong support in Luzon, Regions 1, 2, Cordillera, Region 3, NCR. Really strong Marcos support, and this played out as well during the 2016 vice presidential elections. The problem is that Marcos is competing with the other candidates in Luzon. Like I said earlier, like I mentioned, being Lacson and Soto, lots of Luzon support. Isco Moreno probably have lots of NCR support as well. Pacquiao might get some might get some Pampanga support from Lito Lapid or some Region 3, 4A support as well. So the places where Marcos would have had a bigger advantage over Leni Robredo, many of those strongholds are now a bit more competitive because of the other candidates. So we talk a lot about who steals votes from others. Normally what I've been seeing commonly online is that people are talking about the administration versus the opposition. People taking away from the opposition, taking away from the administration. I think those are all theoretical and hypothetical. It's better to look at actual results. In terms of the actual electoral results, what matters more is regional support, meaning the actual land electoral results, and that shows that Marcos does well in Luzon, but he's again sharing support with Lacson and Moreno, and to some extent Pacquiao as well. But if you don't consider that, I think that given all those things, I do think it's likely that in the grander scheme of things, a lot of support will go to Marcos from these regions. And he's actually, if you look at his race with Leni Robredo, he was quite competitive in 4A, Region 8, 10, and 12, while he blew Leni out of the water in Regions 1, 2, Cordillera, 3, and NCR. Competitive in 4A, 8, 10, and 12, like I said, but quite weak in the rest of Visayas. But that is why I have it number 2. He doesn't have a vice presidential candidate, so we don't even know who could support him in order to get more votes. But as it looks right now, in terms of regional distribution of support, Marcos will be losing support because of Moreno, Lacson, and Pacquiao. Number 1 is Leni Robredo. Now, the reason why Leni Robredo is number 1, apart from the reasons I said earlier in terms of her relative support versus Marcos, is that she has a very, very strong base of support. I'm not sure if it's necessarily her or if it's the Liberal Party in Visayas, specifically Regions 4B, which is Mimaropa, 5 and 6, Bicol, and I forgot which Region 6 is, but I think Western Visayas. But so there's a lot of very strong base of support for Leni Robredo there. And during the 2016 presidential elections, she actually beat Marcos in Region 7, 9, 13, and ARMM, or what is now Bangsamoro. So she beat Marcos in many regions. She has strong base of support in Visayas. And most importantly, she's not competing with any of the other candidates in Visayas. Now, I said earlier, Isco Moreno is a bit of a wild card because he didn't do well in the previous senatorial election, but he again is getting a lot of support. But it's unclear at this moment where Isco Moreno's base of support will be apart from NCR. It's possible that he may decide to go into Visayas and try to get support there. We know that there seems to be the political elites are forming a coalition around Isco Moreno as well, with people like Noli de Castro trying to run on his slate. So it's possible that Moreno, again, it's not clear where he will get support. It's possible he may also get some support from Visayas and from Mindanao. I don't know. But as of right now, the strongest base of support of all the candidates is Leni Robredo's Visayas support. Marcos is very northern Luzon support. Kiko Pangilinan is in the same base as Leni Robredo. She's from the Liberal Party as well, and so he doesn't really add anything to the presidency, to the candidacy of Leni Robredo. But it doesn't hurt as well that, it really consolidates that Visayas support. So that's the order I have right now. Number 1, Leni Robredo. Number 2, Bongbong Marcos. Number 3, Manny Pacquiao. Number 4, Ping Lacson. Number 5, Isco Moreno. Now, when we're looking at the current race, how people are talking, Bongbong Marcos seems very confident that eventually he's going to be in a coalition with PDP-Laban. He said it multiple times in different interviews. And what that means is that he thinks that eventually his vice presidential candidate will be someone from PDP-Laban, whether it's Rodrigo Duterte, Sara Duterte, Bongo, or maybe even Bato de la Rosa. Who knows at this point? So what happens in the hypothetical situation where PDP-Laban, a PDP-Laban candidate is going to be running with Bongbong Marcos? I also looked into that. How we can look at this is look at the 2019 senatorial race. Bongo and Bato de la Rosa both ran for senator, and both of them were at the top or near the top of several regions in the country. And I'm going to just I wrote it down here, all the regions in the country where Bato de la Rosa and Bongo did extremely well in. Region 1, Cordillera, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, Bangsamoro. That's a lot of regions. And importantly, it overlaps with some of the regions where Leni beat Marcos. Now, again, the overlap is in region 7, 9, 13, and Bangsamoro. For those 4 regions, they preferred Leni Robredo to Bongbong Marcos, but they overwhelmingly supported the administration under Duterte in the Duterte senatorial slate, making Bongo and Bato de la Rosa very high up. So because of this, 7, 9, 13, and Bangsamoro, I think, even though Leni beat Marcos in those regions, it's not obvious that she will do so again, especially because a lot of the PDP-Laban support is in those regions, is very consolidated in those regions. Now, if I were to add the PDP-Laban support with Bongbong Marcos' presidency, if that were the case, I think that number 1 will be definitely Bongbong Marcos by quite a bit. Even though he split some support in Luzon, and maybe Pacquiao will split some Mindanao support in Mindanao, based on everything, if Marcos runs with a PDP-Laban candidate, I think that it's a wash. I think Marcos is going to win. But if PDP-Laban runs on a separate slate, maybe they put a Bato de la Rosa with Bongo, I think that Marcos will not be able to win because he won't be able to consolidate support anywhere apart from Northern Luzon. So that's what it looks like right now. And, I spent a lot of time looking at the numbers and double-checking everything, looking at every electoral map, writing all the different, where they get votes, and this is what I've come up with. I think Pacquiao and Lacson are maybe interchangeable. Isco Moreno is a bit more unpredictable. Again, he seems to be consolidating some broad sense of support in the polls. He's doing well in the polls, although, again, what matters more, I think, is actual electoral results. And I do think that Isco Moreno has a chance to kind of, affect the races of Marcos and Robredo. I don't think Manny Pacquiao or Ping Lacson has a chance to win, but based on what it looks like right now, I think it's probably going to be either Bongbong Marcos or Leni Robredo, and maybe Isco Moreno as a spoiler, but I don't think Isco Moreno will win either. But I think he'll be able to possibly get some support away from probably both Marcos and Robredo but we're gonna see over the next few months exactly where or how he's going to be consolidating support. But that's what it looks like right now, and we'll see how this all turns out over the next few months. But hopefully I am wrong. I guess I don't know.